right, welcome to Defense Diaries. I am your host, Bob Mata, and we are going to have a special guest tonight. After kind of a long day of trial streaming, I look forward to tonight's guest. It was supposed to be two. It was my fault. Linda, who was going to be on with us as well, she got called out, but that's not the real story. That's like, I have to own it. I screwed up Eastern Standard Time because both of them are on the East Coast. I'm Central. I had the Court TV thing that I was doing, and I screwed up the time. So Linda wasn't available beyond the time that she was available, which would have been 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. So I screwed that up. We'll make it up to y'all. We do have Michael with us, and if you're not familiar with Michael Bryant, first and foremost, he's an attorney. Second, he's an amazing guy. I've been lucky enough to hang with him on Law and Crime many times as he's a host over there. I'm going to give you a little of his bio. He's a journalist, a practicing attorney, and a broadcaster with more than 30 years of experience in radio and network television. He's licensed to practice in California, state and federal courts. He is a trial lawyer, taking numerous cases to verdict, and as well also works as an attorney for the federal government. Ooh, wow. He currently focuses primarily on helping consumers get justice in their cases against big business and the government. Yes, love that. Fight the man. I love a guy and a gal that fight the man. Michael's also the creator and executive producer of the A&E series, I Survived a Crime. The program gives survivors the chance to tell us what they did and why. And when faced with life-threatening crimes, the series reached number 2 nationally when streamed on Netflix. Pretty impressive. This dude's impressive. Michael's got a lot in his back pocket. He's bringing a lot to the table. He is also a host on the Dan Abrams Law and Crime Network, where I know and love him from, an outlet that streams live trials, including Johnny Depp, Alex Murdaugh, Lori Vallow cases, and many more. And all of them, really. I mean, Law and Crime, they're the bangers, man. They're out there. They're out there in these streets, streaming all the trials that we want to watch. The network recently topped 5.5 million subs. Oh, to have that many subs. He is the host of the Legal Edge brand, a series of more than 1,000 Emmy award-winning television consumer news features. The feature has also earned the National Press Club Award and the AP Award for Writing. So among numerous additional awards. The Legal Edge Network streamed live trials back in 2008, peaking with O.J. Simpson, the kidnap trial, not the big one, and the robbery trial in Las Vegas, which is ultimately what got that dude in prison. So don't undersell that one. That was a big one. That was a lot of people, and I'll ask Michael that when I pull him on, felt that was a payback. That was a payback verdict and a payback sentence on that thing. Because it ultimately was his property. So, but it's interesting. And then, which included the last interview given by OJ to date. And that means ever, because OJ has now left the building, deceased, when Bryant talked to the defendant just days before his conviction. Look at that. Last ever. I can't wait to ask him, did he do it? Did you ask him, did you do it? Did he do it? We all want to know. I think most of us know the answer. And then finally, before launching the Legal Edge, Michael worked in many high-profile positions on national television. The San Francisco native was a trial correspondent and an anchor for Court TV, a correspondent for syndicated news magazine, A Current Affair. Is that still around? Man, I remember A Current Affair. That was a big one. And a consumer correspondent for the syndicated entertainment news magazine, Extra. Man, I remember that. Like, I'm really aging myself, but I am an aged man. I'm old. He also has appeared as a legal analyst on the Today Show, The Early Show, Entertainment Tonight, The Insider, various additional programs on CNN, Fox, NBC, ABC, News Nation, MSNBC. I guess the real question is, where hasn't he been? Because it seems like it's been everywhere. So without further ado, my brilliant friend, Michael Bryant. What is up, my man?
Man, sorry I dozed off during that recitation. Sorry.
Hey, look, man, you got a lot of stuff under your belt, you know.
I just can't keep a job. That's the problem.
I mean, you have been a busy man throughout your career. The question I have is, how do you actively practice while maintaining this very, very busy broadcasting
Yeah,
schedule.
it's kind of when you're doing more than one thing, more than 5 things, it's kind of an ebb and flow, and at a certain point, you get to pick and choose, right? So
Yep.
if you got clients again in California, that's where I'm licensed. I'm doing long distance stuff. I'm not doing court appearances in California anymore or trials in
Right.
California anymore. So I've just shifted the focus and still keep my hand in a few of these different things to keep things from getting boring.
I love it. I love it. And one of the reasons that we wanted to start getting together here, and this is going to be, look, we'll make up for the fact that Linda's not here. Okay.
Yes.
I
I feel
promise.
weird. Yeah, I feel weird. We're joined at the hip these days because of this new thing we're doing. Even
Yeah.
when we're on Law and Crime, we're always on different days, and we never, I used to kid that we were the same person because we were never in the same room together. But
It's true.
now that we're doing this thing, we're very close now because you have to be when you're doing this podcast thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so why don't you take a little bit of time to explain exactly what the show is that you're doing?
Yeah, I wish I really could. What happened was here's how it happened. We went out to dinner one night, and her husband is Dr. Dr. Michael Baden, not Kenney Baden, and my wife, who by the way was the director on the that little thing called Filthy Rich. So she directed that, and Ghislaine Maxwell. So she's in the biz. So we're just having a dinner, and Linda and I just start saying, we don't get to do much together on Law and Crime, and we have this passion for this subject and experience. And next thing you know, like before we got to dessert, it's like, let's do this thing. So Justice Served was born, and we just get on. There are a lot of different true crime things out there, and we weren't really able, because of really the time commitment, to do an in-depth, like a serial type podcast. But we thought it'd be fun just to be able to react to the news of the day, talk to some interesting people, get the perspective of viewers and talk about what they are talking about. And that's what it is. We were lucky enough that the Michelle Troconis trial was right up the road from me here. So I went there and covered that every day. We had a very long interview with Claudia Troconis, who's the sister of Michelle Troconis. And man, people are violent on both sides of that case. I mean, it's scary.
Is that a regional thing, man? Because like the whole thing with the Karen Reed, that like it's the same thing.
It really is. It really
like,
is. And people take these things so personally, even though they have no reason to. So yeah, it really is. And so we saw that unfold, and then of course with the conviction, I watched the trial pretty darn close, and I didn't see evidence to support a conspiracy murder conviction. I just didn't see it. And people are saying, "Oh, you're just on their side, you're defense or no, man. I'm just objective oriented,
you see it."
And I watched the trial, and I don't know. I missed those connective tissues. I didn't see. I saw other stuff, the destruction of evidence, perhaps. Maybe evading some of the police, questioning and investigation. I could see that. You could go with that. But conspiracy to commit murder because she started 3 fires in the house over a period of, it just didn't make sense to me. I didn't think they got there. But this jury of 6 in Connecticut, 6, they got there. So, we've obviously been following that whole process and the appeals to come, and had pretty close contact with her family. For better or worse, I'd love to hear from the Farber-Dulos family. If they want to chime in, be happy to give them a forum. So anyway, that was jumping off point for the little Justice Served show. And now we're just trying to kind of, continue to follow what's out there. And we have a great interview, part 2 of it, that will be launching, I think, tomorrow or the next day, with Steve Wolf, who is the gun expert. He prepared a report in the Baldwin case. He was going to be a witness in the criminal trial, but that obviously blew up for a whole different bunch of reasons, which were weird in and of themselves. But he's still involved because of the civil case. So his report, I think, is going to help that case settle. It's a wrongful death case being brought by Helena Hutchins' parents. She, of course, the cinematographer on Rust, killed on the set when Alec Baldwin's gun. No. He didn't pull the trigger, but it went off. So this report basically burns him. And my theory has always been, and Steve tends to agree with this, and we'll have this in our interview. I believe in personal responsibility. I don't believe in letting actors, rise above what the normal human being must do. So if my justification for shooting somebody is, man, it would have taken me 20 seconds to look at the bullets in this gun to see if they were legit or not. I can't spend 20 seconds to save somebody's life. What's wrong with you? I'm an actor. So That's what I mean. That's what
I'm in my process.
That's right.
I'm in my
I'm here to
process.
be an actor. I just think that's a tough
Yeah.
sell unless you're starstruck. And who knows what would have happened with this jury? It's never going to get to them. We know that is over. But on the civil side, where it's only a preponderance of the evidence, and where he would face liability as a producer. Another thing they screwed up. I mean, don't get me started on Morrissey and the prosecution in that Baldwin criminal case, of which she's just screwed up. Who knows? Even the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed may come back from the dead. But they screwed up the indictment so that he wasn't even on the hook for anything he did as a producer, which I thought was really the better way to get him. That's still alive in the civil case. That's still a thing. So you combine that with the lower burden of proof, and again, Steve Wolf's he just burns him up in this report, basically saying you got to be a moron not to check the gun. I don't care how many people have handled it and said cold gun, somebody's dead.
Yeah. So. And right. I like that whole thing with Baldwin, just kind of the way it shook out. And I think a couple witnesses, or I'm sorry, jurors had come forward and talked, and essentially they were kind of on the mindset, like at least these two that spoke openly were like, we weren't there. We weren't like, but again, that goes to your point that Morrissey really screwed up in terms of the indictment, because this judge, she said, look, I'm not letting you take both paths. You're either taking the actor path or the producer path. And I don't think that you laid it out in the indictment, the producer path. So you're stuck with the actor path, which is what really destroyed their case for them in a lot of different ways, because that whole analysis of, okay, where was Baldwin in the hiring process of Hannah Gutierrez? Where was he in the process of maintaining her as an employee, despite the fact that he has 6 crew members walking out of that set saying this thing is a nightmare. Like we are not going to work here anymore. And it's like all those things fell to the wayside. So you're left basically with an actor in his process who, you can make an argument that when in some actors that are method actors are completely out of their mind. They're not like cognizant of normal situations. I was trying to give an analogy of like when I would give a closing argument in a case, I was oblivious, frankly, to everything else. It was like I was in my head because I wasn't a reader. I don't sit there and read my openings. I'm going through all the facts. Sure, I'll have bullet points that I'll go. But, I'm a wanderer and a talker, and I know my facts. So, but I can see a world in which Baldwin wouldn't have checked the weapon, but we had plenty of people in our chats that were like, look, I don't care. A gun, gun safety applies. I don't care whether you're making a movie. I don't care what circumstances. You always treat any weapon as if it's loaded and it's your responsibility. And the folks that are heavy duty in terms of gun safety, who are, people that typically own weapons, they're serious about it, and they're serious about it for a reason. And you can't really argue with the end result here. Had he been more careful, assuming that he would have been like me, look, I've never owned a weapon, it's like, I've never been in a position where I've needed to own a weapon, even though that may be changing soon. But I've got this thing where I don't know, unless I've been trained on whether or not I'd be able to pick out a dummy from a live round. It sounds like the blanks that you'd definitely be able to figure that out, because they take the projectile out and they pinch the top. But in terms of, I don't know, man, it was.
What you have to do is watch the segment with Steve Wolf, because he'll have both for you. We look at both, and it's so obvious what they do. They drill holes in the side of the dummy so that visually it's very clear. This ain't, a real bullet. It does have a projectile, but nothing that's going to fire off that. It's got the primer at the end as well. Again, It's designed so that if you hold it up, it looks like a real bullet. But they put the holes in it so that if you hold it up on camera, you just put your fingers over those 2 holes. And it looks like a bullet. And if you put it in a gun or in a holster or something, you just cover those 2 holes with however you're mounting it. Very, very interesting stuff. And this guy is cool. So I would check that out if you get a chance.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, and he talks too about. I said, I got one question for you, Steve. Why in the hell is there live ammo on any set anywhere? What's the point? You've got blanks if you want the sound and the fire, and you've got special effects if you want to show the result. What's the point? And he had this weird answer about how ammo's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I said, so you're telling me that there's a conscious decision, because it would cost money to prevent live ammo on the set, that people just say, it's out there. We'll deal with it. That's the way he comes to a conclusion. And here's why he says that. He said Alec Baldwin is responsible for half of the deaths that have taken place on a movie set as a result of a firearm. So
Wow.
the only other one, the other one, Brandon Lee in The Crow. So that was even weirder one. That was even weirder because that gun had been fired and then there was a projectile stuck in it. Yes. So they did have a blank in the gun, or a dummy. No, it was a blank. Sorry. They had a blank in the gun. And when he is shot in the abdomen, the blank forces the old projectile out, almost replaces the wadding in the blank. I mean, that's bizarro. And nobody, by the way, nobody was indicted in that. And it probably because of that scenario, it was just too strange. But that's Steve Wolf's position on that. So he's a good dude.
That sounds fascinating, man. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And to your point, with the CGI at the level that it's at now, especially with what they're doing with AI, like the fact of the matter is, you simply don't need to introduce live weapons anywhere in any movie set because they can put them in like instantaneously. You won't be able to differentiate real from CGI ever. I mean, they do it all the time. You can't, I can't tell, when they're using green screen CGI for background. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like the concept that they need actual weapons is so old timey that they're just it's old producers. They're like, I'm not using robots. I'm not
for my days in extra, I was on a lot of movie sets and saw a lot of that inside stuff. And I really think if they were to go, if there were more of these horrible tragedies, if they were to go total CGI, I think it would be bad. I really do. I think it would be bad for the craft. I think it would be bad for I think there's way too much CGI anyway. The guy's just acting in front of a big green screen. So to me, that's the lazy fix. Why don't you just police live ammo on the set? How about that? Why don't we do that? Then you maintain a little of that authenticity, without replacing everything with CGI. You and I, Bob, we're gone. CGI, what do they need us for? So
no, there's no question. Well, that's what the worry is. I'm less concerned about them putting in monsters, vehicles, backgrounds, and putting humans in, or what appear to be humans, getting rid of us. So they can already deep fake our voices. There's no question about it. It misses the humanity. I've heard it, and it sounds like the voice, but it does not have the humanity of the person that's speaking. It can't capture the intonations. There's differences, but that's only a matter of time before it's going to be able to do that too. And it goes with don't even get me started on the AI shit. I am not a fan. It scares the hell out of me. In terms of the entertainment industry, writing, screenwriting, novels, it'll theoretically be able to do all of it in the blink of an eye. And publishing companies won't have to pay authors. You know what I mean? It's like the concept of it is terrifying. So, all right, let's move on to something way, way more terrifying. That's the Karen Reed.
Karen Reed? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yesterday going into that hearing, I had a sneaking suspicion that we probably wouldn't get. I thought it was going to be a quick day, but I'm going to be honest. I thought it was going to be a quick day because I thought that Judge Bev Kenney was going to come out and say, you know what? I hear you. I read your motion. Unfortunately, you waived it because you failed to object at the time that you needed to object. That didn't happen. Instead, she set a trial date for January 27 of 2025. And then we've also got a hearing date of April 13th. I believe August 13th.
I think it's August 9th, but check me on that.
You're right. No, you're right. It's the 9th or the 13th. Dizzy will pop it up in here again. I screwed it up yesterday and she corrected me yesterday as well. But it's at 2 p.m. So
wait, 2 p.m. when? Is that Central? Is that
that
Eastern?
yeah, that'll be your time. That'll be did you
Eastern
see that
Daylight
big-
Time. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So Dizzy, yeah, you're correct, Michael. 2 p.m. EDT. So what are your thoughts on that? First of all, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on the motion to dismiss by the defense?
Here, my first thought was interesting. Then, as I started to evaluate it and the likelihood of success, I said, I don't know if the defense even cares if they win, but they're sending a message. They're making the prosecution aware. This is probably not a strange result if we believe the 5 hearsay, declarants who are testifying through Alan Jackson's affidavit. You and I both know that's totally inadmissible.
Totally.
Give me some affidavits from those people. Now we're
Right.
talking. That's another reason I think it's just a message. This is a message to the prosecution, assuming they are legit. And I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody's that stupid that they're going to create this kind of problem and lose their license when they're proven wrong. So they're saying to the prosecution, why are you bothering? You got a loser on murder 2. You got a loser on the vehicular manslaughter. That leaves you with the involuntary based on intoxication, which does have it still carries 5 to 20 if you're convicted on that, so it's still legitimate penalty.
Right.
But if that's what they were hung on, you shouldn't be bothering anybody with these others. I think that's the key. Now, if we look at the merits, do I think, hey, is it going to succeed? It ain't going to succeed in front of Judge Bev. That's for sure. She's just going to rubber stamp a denial so that it can be appealed, and it will be. And then, she picked that January 27 date, thinking that that'll give enough time for the appellate process to run its course. I don't know I don't know enough about the Massachusetts appellate courts or their docket to know how busy they are or where this would fall in their level, of importance. I don't know.
Right.
But let's assume the appellate court gets to it. They're kind of weird in Massachusetts. They're very rigid and kind of arcane about their laws and rules. Remember the discussion about the verdict slip? Because we couldn't possibly call it a verdict form. So they're talking about the verdict slip, and it didn't have the not guilty option for the lesser included, right? And they fixed that. But Bev was hesitant to even do that. It's well settled, Massachusetts law and then, somebody slapped her about a little bit and she saw the light and they fixed it. So I've heard Massachusetts attorneys just saying, hey, this was waived. You mentioned it early on. This was waived because they didn't bring it up before she said, the M word, mistrial. Well, I don't know that the law is that settled. That's what appellate courts are for, is to kind of interpret what has come before, and maybe there's a change that's needed because of a certain case. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how ballsy the appellate courts are in Massachusetts if they would, make that claim that, look, she didn't give them a chance. It just happened. It did happen fast, I have to say. It was fast. Thank you. It was like, okay, I'm going to declare this hung jury and a mistrial. Thank you for your service. I mean, it was bam. It was fast. On the other hand, Bob, give me your thoughts on this. If you're Jackson and Yannetti and you're like, well, it's 5 days of deliberation. We don't really know what they're thinking or what they're hung up on. Is it smart to ask for an answer you don't want to hear? Like maybe they say, look, we want to find out if they're unanimous on any counts. And they find out, oh, yeah, well, by the way, we're unanimous for guilt on murder. You don't know. You don't know. So maybe they were being a little coy in not asking that question. And now, of course, after the fact, when you have 5 anonymous jurors saying, no, we were all 12-0 on counts 1 and count 3. Now you're upset about it. I'm just not so sure they were willing to hang it out there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like we both watched that, right? We both watched that trial, and every attorney that I spoke to from far and wide, like no attorney that handled any kind of criminal trial work thought that they came close to showing the intent required under the statute in order to get that second-degree murder. Like I would have felt very confident if I'm Jackson and Yannetti that they didn't come to a firm unanimous on that count, because they didn't have the evidence for it. As to count 3, maybe, but like you have this kind of juxtaposition between counts 2 and 3 where you kind of need one to happen in order to find them guilty on the other. for the most part, which is a little bit confusing, at least for the jury. So I don't know, man. Like
I get
think
that, but what concerns me is, ever since OJ, I can't take anything a jury does for granted. Any reasonable person watching the Karen Reed trial would agree, like you do. I think most of us believe it was overcharged, and that second-degree murder should never even been on the plate, but it was. Right. I think it's a scary proposition to assume anything when a jury's got the case in their hands. You just never know.
You never know. I try to tell our subs that all the time. I'm like, that's the one constant in the law is that you never know what a jury's going to do. Never. We have had so many cases that we brought to verdict, and I'm talking criminal, where Alice and I look at each other like, man, we just crushed that, high-fiving out in the hallways and then they come back with the guilty. You cannot know. Like as much as you think that you might know or whatever, because you're always sitting there trying to figure out, oh, I think juror number 6 likes me, smile, like all that bullshit. None of it ever matters.
And you're second guessing, and you're so deep into it. You are so deep.
Yeah,
you're eating, sleeping, drinking it, and the jury's not.
Right. Exactly.
I remember I had a case once. It was a month-long trial. This was a civil case. And we had the defendant. It was actually this nice old pharmacist. It reminded me of from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. Remember the pharmacist put the wrong pills in the meds because his son had just been killed. Well, our pharmacist put the wrong pills in the bottle, and the plaintiff took them and was claiming all kinds of crazy after effects and long-term effects. And so one of our arguments was that she was basically a drunk, and these were CNS depressants like Halcyon, which is the big mama, Xanax, all of those, Versed, the things you get, for a simple operation. Anyway, we're going on and on and on. We think and we're admitting liability. So now we're just fighting about how much. So we think we've done a good job. They come back with their number. That wasn't the point. The point is we got a chance to talk to the jurors afterwards. What were you focusing on? What worked? What didn't work? All they could say was how the plaintiff's attorney dressed weird, and that every day they were talking about what he wore to court. I'm like, man, we're stressing out over this, and you're just worrying about what the guy is wearing to court. Okay.
Did he wear the same tie twice?
He's like, you wore a white belt one day. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh my god. Yeah. It's you never. It's like that whole thing where you're trying to figure out when you're doing, voir dire, and you're like, oh my God, like I wish that I had more information, because here in Illinois, we find out the morning of. We don't get any kind of jury information sheets ahead of time. Wow. So we can't do any kind of background. It's like you're sitting there. We get them like 20 minutes before they start bringing in the jurors, the potential jurors. So we're sitting there going through the sheets, numbering them. I'm furiously going on my phone, trying to find people on Facebook to glean something about them. So it's like, you never know, man. Yeah. I have a feeling she's going to kick the can down the road. Like you said, it's going to go straight up to the appellate court. Whether or not they're going to find that they waived it, I find that they had more than ample time. Like to me, they had to wait. Like they're sitting there waiting for the jury to come in. When she said there's another note, she didn't read it. They're all just sitting there quietly, and I'm not sweating.
That kind of makes my point, that they're calculating here. What's the risk benefit analysis here?
Are
do
they
we bring it up or do we not?
Are they considering it a win?
If they're thinking, okay, it's hung jury, it's a mistrial, we can't go wrong with that. We know where that puts us. But what if we open that door and the big monster comes through?
Yeah. Well, it's so. I just want to know what they were thinking. Like, you know what I mean? I ultimately
we always do, Bob. We always want to know what they're thinking.
I want to get to that evidentiary hearing so we can hear what the hell they were thinking. But yeah, all right. So let's shift gears. Go to a case that's going right now. And we got a couple of cases wherein we've got some self-defense claims by women who killed their spouses. Both are saying this person was abusive to me. I was a victim of domestic violence, whether it be physical, psychological, financial, whatever the case may be, or a combination of all those things. what are you thinking about the Ashley Benefield case? Like, I mean, it's tough. I watched it today. They got a ways to go, I think.
Yeah, one thing I appreciate was when they were doing all the pretrial motions, they had one camera from the back, and I said, "This is going to be brutal if all we see is the back of her head the whole time, because we learn so much from their faces and their reactions." So thank goodness they had the locked on shot, so we saw her the whole time and reacting, which I think helped her as opposed to Karen Reed. Well, I don't think it helped a lot because she just seems more, I don't know, more warm. When her neighbor took the stand, this is the guy that answered the door, and she's standing there saying she just shot and killed her husband. He was, I love that guy, tremendous witness, and you could see some exchange. Yeah. You could see the exchange between her, just the visual recognition of how tough this must have been for him and that day, and I think she became very likable just in that couple of moments. So that's key. I think that's.
I agree.
She's the anti-Karen Reed. So
yeah, and I mean, I agree completely. Like there were many times during kind of many different witnesses wherein, especially when they were showing the pictures of her former husband dead. Like you could see her. I mean, could she be acting? I guess theoretically, but you could see her. Like I could see her working on her breathing so that she wouldn't start like really crying. I mean, she was showing emotion that was appropriate for what you'd want your client to be showing at that given time. Whereas, like you said, with Karen Reed, you've got her. Like I kept saying when we'd be talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, like her, like what are Jackson and Yannetti doing, not telling her to shut that shit down? You cannot be like, jurors are not going to appreciate your snarkiness. They're not going to appreciate the fact that, yes, you think that you've been railroaded here and everything that they're saying is bullshit. You have to be a stonewall. Like it is Poker Face City when you are sitting there at that table, and any other thing will be misconstrued by the jurors. They don't know what you're thinking, and they're going to think the wrong thing. So the safe bet is just sit there. And, and that's not to say that if you have genuine emotion, if you see something that makes you feel emotional, be emotional, but don't sit there and do the shit that she was doing. It was driving me nuts. And I think at some point after a really, really, like a really bad reaction from her, I can't remember which witness it was. It might've been Proctor. I can't remember, but I'm like, they have to shut her down. I'm like, cause this thing is not going to work with her. So yeah, I am getting a much, much different feeling from Ashley. I mean, let me ask you this. We still have a long way to go in this trial. And based on the little we've heard in terms of evidence, I mean, where are you kind of at with this thing? I know people are kind of dug in on this one. Like you've got those that feel like, okay, yeah, Doug was an abusive son of a bitch, and he had this coming, and he had his thumb on her, and this was all psychological. He wasn't beating her, but he had control of her in a much different way. And she was young. I mean, there's a 30-year age difference. Yeah. Or is she the plotting murderess, man? What's your gut?
I mean, I think we're going to learn far more on the defense case, because let's face it, this is, for the prosecution, it's pretty cut and dried. She admits she shot him. We know where the gun is. So we're going through the basics about where he was shot and where his body was. That's pretty clean. It's the self-defense claim and the defense case, which we have not heard, that is going to lay this out for us and bring us. I'm nowhere near any sort of conclusion at this point, but I know what I want to hear. And I want to hear some history of domestic violence. I want to hear something that would justify, in her mind, shooting a guy in the back and a couple other times. And apparently she shot, 4 times, but the gun jammed. Maybe she would have shot more. We've seen so many cases over the years, Bob, where when there's been a proven domestic violence history, that the wife, usually it's the wife, not necessarily Depp versus Heard, not always the wife, but where the wife will shoot the husband or boyfriend in his sleep, totally defenseless. And it's justified, or self-defense works, because they've laid this groundwork of just, she was frightened to death. Now, to your point, more common when you've got physical abuse involved. So to me, that's going to be a critical distinction in this case. So I can't wait to see the defense case.
Yeah, me too. And you're exactly right. It's going to lay exactly on that. My father actually represented a young woman, I think who was 14. And this was after Gacy, like probably about 6 years after Gacy. And kind of the backstory is that her father was incredibly abusive, not so much to the girl, but to her mother, to the extent where she was sitting up there like every night. It was like the same thing on repeat, just this abusive thing where he's beating her, he's screaming at her, he's saying, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." And so finally, and this goes on for years. So this kid's got like literal PTSD. So she like wakes up out of a sleep after a full night of arguing, and she had fallen asleep up in her room, grabs a baseball bat, proceeds to go down to the couch where her father is sleeping and caves his skull in, killing him while he's sleeping. So ultimately, my father says, "Okay, I'm going to go get her evaluated by forensic psychologists and psychiatrists." They, of course, come back and say she absolutely thought that her mother was in peril. Maybe not that second, but ultimately. So, and it got to the point where it was one of those rare occasions where the prosecuting office said, "You know what? We agree. Like we can't give her a full pass on it, but we're going to reduce it. We're going to reduce the charge, and we're going to give her probation." So she ended up never doing a minute of jail time, and she shouldn't have. It was the right fit for what happened, because everyone realized that this kid was, and she's gone on to have like a wonderful life. I mean, it's like, it's one of those
Yeah, I mean,
rare situations where, I mean, it's, to live in somebody else's shoes and to be in that position, it's kind of tough to know what you do.
and
But
that's such a sympathetic, victim.
yeah,
That's always part of the mix.
right.
How's the jury going to interpret this person? What they went through, how they reacted. Nobody can say, "Well, I would have done the same thing," but you get the sense that they can go along for that ride, and the prosecution probably sensed that and figured out the best result.
Yeah, exactly. Which you hope for. I mean, I spent
Sure.
20 plus years begging prosecutors to just act reasonably, and to acknowledge mental illness and things like that. And sometimes it's a real uphill battle, depending on who you're talking with. And, I just had a lot of situations where, you're trying to go up the chain, but you're realizing that, especially if it's in a county that you're practicing in a lot, the politics of that, of saying, "You know what, I'm gonna leapfrog you, and I'm gonna go to your boss because you're sucking right now. You're not hearing me, or you're not having the conversation that I'm asking you to have with your boss to see if we can work out something." So yeah, yeah, I agree, man. It's going to be a really fascinating case, but I think that the defense is really going to have to show something, because it's not going to be physical. That is not going to exist. I think that it's pretty much in stone that he was not physically abusive to her. It's going to be the psychological shit. It's going to be, I mean, look, when I think about just objectively somebody pulling their weapon out and firing it into the ceiling, it's pretty hard to make a viable excuse as to when that's okay and when that wouldn't scare the shit out of you. You know what I mean? Again, he's a guy 30 years plus her senior. She's still young. It's like, I know that people are like, "Oh, she crafted this whole thing. She was running this game from the get." And maybe she was, but
Well,
I
we
also,
know it wasn't like they were lovey-dovey and had this little undercurrent. They're getting divorced and they're fighting over
right,
custody, which we
right,
see all the time.
right.
And there's been, some prosecution theory not presented in court yet that, she knew from the time she got pregnant that this guy's out of the picture,
Yep.
however that was going to happen. So yeah, you got to buy that she is, that conniving. And I got to do a little more research on her background. Whenever I see, a ballerina, I'm thinking, was she a Russian ballerina? She's over here
Right.
from, I haven't gotten into that yet because the case has kind of blossomed so quickly. But I think that may be interesting.
Same. Like, I don't know that either. Like, does she come from wealth? Does she come from money? Like, is that part of the motive? I haven't heard that it's mentioned as part of the motive. I don't know. Was Doug wealthy? Like was he like I don't know, because that would obviously, because coming into it knowing nothing about the case, which I love coming into a case having no background on it, so I haven't formed any kind of opinion, and I'm really just that kind of unmolded piece of clay that you love as a juror, right? But I'm like did dude have a lot of dough? Was he loaded?
Their life insurance policies were there,
right,
all of those usual motives,
Yeah, because like the kid thing, like, and that was the state sell, like right out of the gate, that she got pregnant, and from the minute she was pregnant, she never wanted this guy to have any kind of visitation or relationship with that kid, which just seems weird to me.
It seems weird to me. If you're just looking for a sperm donor, I mean, was he the cream of the crop? Was he the best you could get? I mean, nothing against him, the poor guy,
right?
But it just seems like a wacky plan to me.
It does, because you have to realize that with child support comes visitation. Now they're not relying on one another, meaning that like if you've handled any kind of domestic relation cases, you can have a deadbeat dad and it still does not affect their ability to be able to have visitation of their children. Sure. It may land them in jail ultimately, which it really is the only debtor's prison if you're a deadbeat, in terms of taking care of your kids, which you should be, frankly. Yep. If you're not out there working, taking care of your people, then, you're useless to me. So, but like in that particular situation, like I just can't see the end game making sense for her. Like, oh, what, like I'm gonna divorce this dude thinking he's not going to get. It just seems like an awful long play. Like
but if you as we say in the comedy world, buy the premise, you buy the bit. So if the premise here is she didn't want him in the mix even after a divorce, so how do you fix that? You kill him.
Yeah, I mean, well, Kitty C's saying, like, what kind of money does he have, Kitty C? Like, that's what I'm asking. I know you're throwing this out there, but do you know, was he independently wealthy?
I really don't.
I was asking our viewer here, because she's like, this is that thought. This is the other side of it, that, she was the conniving, plotting murderess, that this whole thing was a ruse, and it was ultimately to get her money. Like, I guess, again, like the kid part is what throws me off. It's like, she's like, oh, I want to open my own, ballet school, and yet I'm going to get pregnant so that I can't really be the number. Like I didn't know if she still wanted to dance herself, or if she wanted to instruct, or if she wanted to be like the main liege. I'm the liege.
She 32-ish? Is that right? She's 32, something like that.
I mean, yeah.
I think she was 28 when this happened, give or take.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of, you're done with the ballet world at that point? Isn't that kind of,
I think she was 24 when they hooked up.
Okay.
I think she was 24. Yeah. And then they're together 4 years. This goes down. Yeah. Dude. Yeah. Like, I could see a world in which he is a glommy son of a bitch. And he's like, you know what I'm saying? He gets this young, beautiful girl, gets his hooks in her, and then gets super possessive. Like, I can see that. Like, that is not something that I find to be like unbelievable.
No,
dude married her,
especially
in 13 days.
As he's getting older, she's really not. I mean, in that age group, you're about the same. Late 20s, you're the same. So yeah, I could see if he felt like he was losing grip. And I mean, they were getting a divorce, so it was happening,
right?
So,
but I think she's the one who filed. You know what I mean? Well, it wasn't him.
Part of her master plan.
I guess that's the argument. That's the argument. Yeah. So it's like there's a lot there. It's a juicy one. I'm pretty anxious to hear the defense's side of it. Sounds like they're going to be done by Thursday. So I mean,
so even if they're a little off on the timing, because this judge is very loose. He's not a very rigid guy with scheduling, which I always liked. As I say, a trial is a living, breathing thing, and there are all kinds of variables. As long as the most important audience, the jury, is taken care of, the scheduling, I'll make it work. And it sounds like the defense has 4 people coming in from out of state. Right. And if they get the case turned over to them, anytime Thursday, I think the last witness, again, if tomorrow goes well, the last witness for the prosecution will be Thursday morning.
Right.
Defense could have their case queued up, in the afternoon if they can organize the witnesses. So,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll plan accordingly, but yeah, I'm assuming that we've got to have a couple experts coming in. I mean, that's
yeah.
the only way. They're going to have to sell that. And she's, like you said, like she has to testify. There's no
I
way.
think so. And man, that is must see TV.
I don't know how you can move forward with the cell, because we know that the stand your ground motion dismiss failed. I mean, but they can still absolutely, and they are leaning hard into self-defense.
Yep.
So like I just don't know how you, in any case, like every self-defense case I've ever had, I've had to put my defendant on because they have to tell the tale.
Of course. So even though they can layer that with all these, I'm guessing
Sure.
some recipient witnesses and obviously experts, but if I'm in that jury and I don't hear from the person claiming self-defense, I don't know if you get my vote. You know?
No, there's no way in hell. So, all right. So, what trials coming up are you looking forward to? And don't say Karen Reed. We've already done that.
Yeah. Well, I was sort of kind of half interested in Lori Vallow, but not so much anymore, and it's been pushed off again. She's just weird, and
she's weird.
And
I mean, she's warped, man. She's like we did, Allison and my wife and I, who you got to meet at Crime Con, and
yeah, that's right. In fact, I only came on because I thought Allie was going to be here. So
you're a smart dude, man. You're a smart dude, and I was lucky enough to meet your lovely wife as well.
Wait, before we go on, let me tell you this. So I'll talk about it. So I'm going to do a defense diaries with Bob Mata. She's like, wait a minute. I said, Keanu Reeves. That's what she's told me. You remind her of Keanu Reeves.
I'll take it.
I'll go with that. So,
thanks, Michael.
That. Yeah.
Don't be a hater. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Right. I'm doing Keanu. So, okay.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to Adelson. I think Donna Adelson's case.
Man, she's the queen bee. I think that's a good call. I mean, we know the story is unbelievable. I used to call it as the Adelsons turn on each other. That was how I always described the next one that comes along. So yeah, the mama, the Ma Barker of this, or is it Parker? What is it from Bonnie and Clyde? Is it Barker or Parker?
Ma Barker.
Barker.
Yeah,
She's the Ma Barker of this whole operation, and it is scary. It is so scary.
Well, let me ask you this: like, where do you? And I know that they keep using Wendy in all the trials.
Yes.
Do you think? I mean, like my buddy Jay, who I live stream all kinds of stuff with, he's my partner. He is absolutely convinced, and I'm not convinced. My question is, do they have enough evidence to get her? That she clearly knew what was going on. Was she really the driving force behind this, or are we to believe that Donna was so hell-bent on getting those grandkids down to her area that she plotted all this without Wendy even knowing about it? I mean,
I understand that she was given some level of immunity. I'm not really quite sure how broad. Was it transactional? Was it
right
overall immunity?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I would never let her off the hook. Never. Wendy. She is, I think she's got some psychosocial issues, like nothing seems to bother her. And I don't know if that's because she doesn't have any sort of conscience or because she feels so protected by whatever level of immunity she's been given. But no, I think she's in deep, and whatever deal they made to get the other Adelsons, suggested to the authorities that that's the trade-off we're willing to make. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing that blows my mind about that case is the fact that Ruth has not seen those grandkids since all this shit went down. Like the fact that that family is running around with the kids who are now in their getting into their late teen years. Like they're privy to what the hell is going on there. It's impossible that they don't know everything that's going on surrounding, their mother's side of this family. And yet, like Ruth just cannot get her hands on these kids. And it's strange to me that, and I guess like she advocated and lobbied and got a law passed out there down in Florida to where they have an avenue to get into court. I mean, you have to have standing. Yeah, you've got to have standing. Like people just don't understand. You've got to have standing. There's got to be a statute. There's got to be an avenue for you to get into court. and that she's worked very, very diligently to do that. And now she's going to try to make the move to get those kids out of that family, man. I mean, it's like when you see this much shit go down, I mean, how many of them do you have to convict before a family court judge can say, you know what?
Probably a better place for these kids.
Right.
It could be they're going to be of age by the time it matters.
Yeah,
you're right.
exactly.
What better place though in Florida to ramrod through a grandparents' rights initiative? I mean, come on.
No
half
doubt.
the state is grandparents. So
yeah, so like
when is that one starting? I forgot.
September.
Okay.
I want to say like mid-September. Dizzy will give me the exact date. I think it's around the 9th or the 13th. Everything's the 9th or the 13th.
That's right.
In my mind, everything. Yeah. So and then the other one that I'm looking forward to, which Jay says it's the 8th. Oh wait, Murder Church he's talking about. Jay, when does Adelson, when does Donna's trial start? It's like mid-September, I think. 9/17.
Okay.
So the other one that I'm looking forward to, which very much appears that it's not going to have cameras in there, which is a shame because it's a case that absolutely needs cameras on there, is the Richard Allen case out of the Delphi case.
Yeah, you're deep into that thing. You are the expert on that case.
Well, and I take so much shit, and it's like I haven't given any kind of proclamation as to innocence or guilt other than I think that probable cause affidavit leans innocent, which is my legal opinion. In terms of the procedural process, it's been a nightmare, which is also my legal opinion on it. In terms of innocence or guilt, I have no clue. I don't know what the evidence is. And I just take such a beating on that case because, again, you've got two cases wherein and the thing that makes them similar, and I'm talking about Reed and Richard Allen's cases, that you have the defense of both of those cases come forward with their full theory of the case via a motion to dismiss and what they called a motion for a Franks hearing in the Delphi case, where they're laying out their entire theory of the case, but not only laying out their theory of the case, but pointing their finger at third-party culprits. Those are the only two cases in my memory that I can remember the defense coming full blown, not just saying like we're giving notice of a third-party culprit, but giving their entire theory of defense for the public to consume, which we're typically used to only getting the prosecutor side of that. That is how it has been forever. I'm a fan of it. I think it evens the scales of justice leading into trial. However, now that we have social media, it has created the most toxic communities in both of those communities that I've ever seen. And if you tie that back into what was going on with Koberger pre-arrest, which was reckless and disgusting, where people were accusing people of being murdered, professors, like TikTokers saying professors are murder. I mean, it's gotten off the rails, and like people are trying to suck me into it as if I've got some kind of position, which I don't. You're
not the turtle boy of the Richard Allen case.
No. And they're trying. There's a particular podcast out there trying to make me out to it. I'm like, the one thing that I have to rely on is my content. And my content is just, it's out there. Like there's no, it speaks for itself. And it's like, it's not me trying to sell any kind of narrative for anybody other than this guy's rights are being trampled on. Like I consider myself to be a defense bar watchdog. Like I've been a defense attorney. I never was on the other side of the aisle. I've been a defense attorney the entire way. I come from a very short line of defense attorneys. My dad was a defense attorney before me. And I'm very adamant about protecting the Constitution because, as you know, Michael, it's not the prosecutors and the cops that do that. It's the defense attorneys. We are the ones that police the police. We are the ones that make sure the prosecutors towing the line. We are the ones that make sure if there's a violation of somebody's constitutional rights, that we are the ones that call the cops on it, because while that case may not affect you, the fact is if we don't call the cops on them violating constitutional rights and they just take it for granted and they start doing it out of habit, we're going to live in a much different country than we all want to live in. So, I mean, and we're the ones who do it. We take a beating because people don't really know what we do. So I've spent like 3 years trying to educate people what criminal defense attorneys really do. And we're not we're not bottom feeder scumbags getting people off in technicalities. What we're doing is we're protecting the Constitution and our rights as citizens, because if we don't do it, no one else who else does it? There is no other, like, it's not going to be politicians, and it certainly isn't the cops. I mean, they're enforcing the law. They're not protecting.
Sort of.
From
and if there's not a better example than the Morrissey prosecution in the Baldwin case, I mean, that is extreme, but there it is for you. There, look what will be done. And here's what I found interesting, if I can drift off into that case for a second.
Yeah.
I was on Law and Crime last week, just before the testimony was being given on the motion by the defense to dismiss because of the evidence that was not turned over, right? They were going to have the cop, Hancock, come back on the stand. They were going to have Teskey, the guy who's kind of a prop coordinator, come on. And as I was leaving, I said, well, it's not like they're going to get on the stand and say, oh, you caught me. I did it. But that's, in fact, what happened. When Morrissey said, no, I'll take the stand, this needs to get out there, she sounded like, well, what's the big deal? Yeah,
right.
I saw these extra bullets. For those who don't remember, there were some extra bullets. Never did make it to the set, in theory, but they were like the ones that were subject to examination in the case against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and, of course, Baldwin. She made a unilateral decision that they weren't the same. Therefore, they were irrelevant. Therefore, I'm not turning them over. My point is that she made that sound like it was a perfectly reasonable analysis and within her power.
Right.
That's scary. So somebody did get on the stand and basically say, yep, we did it. So what?
And what's even scarier is she's really a defense attorney.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, she's a special prosecutor.
Right.
She may not be any kind of attorney very long. I don't know that she's going to survive this. I really don't.
She shit the bed on that so heavily. It was unbelievable. And it was like, and she was such a condescending jerk off during the entire, like, her demeanor was so off-putting. Like, just like the glasses constantly.
They got the glasses on their head.
It was like it was
yeah,
really,
it's like, I'm about to be scolded, I think,
Right, exactly. Let me take these off. I'm about to get in your business. Yeah, like that was unbelievable. And like you said, I mean, Hannah's case coming down the pike. I mean, believe me, like, she only got 18 months. I don't know if that was day for day or if that's truth in sentencing out there, and if it's 85%. I don't know, but yeah, exactly, man. That's
a pretty light sentence there. I mean, New Mexico is pretty light. I mean, 18 months for involuntary. I think in most states it's 5 or more.
Yeah. Well, look at Reed. 5 on a manslaughter, while driving while intoxicated or under the influence.
That's 5. Yeah, that's 5 to 20.
20.
Yeah. So I was surprised. Well, that may be, who knows? That may be some sort of reflection of New Mexico. Everybody's got guns. Accidents happen. Involuntary manslaughter. Maybe it happened so much there that they minimized the penalty. I don't know, but I was surprised. 18 months.
Yeah, me too. And it's like, and I was trying to tell people, like, as Alec Baldwin was sitting there, and I'm like, I know when you think of like 18 months as a number, it's easy to kind of sit there and say, I could do that on my head. Mm-hmm. When you think about what that would mean to his legacy as an actor, love him or hate him, the guy's a massive movie star, huge TV star. He's been doing it for decades, but like, not only that, just ripping him out of the life that he's known and throwing his ass in the Department of Corrections for 18 months. Like, you saw it. You saw how much that was weighing on him when that thing went down, man. Like, people were like, he's acting. I'm like, you're out of your mind. No, I'm like, you have no idea, like, the pressure that people feel like. And we saw it. We see it when we're dealing with our clients. Like the pressure of the process itself is part of the punishment. That's something that people don't understand, that the 2 years of having to go to court every 30 days, stand in front of that judge. You really don't know what the hell is going on. You've got a lawyer who probably doesn't call you enough and isn't coddling you enough. And you're sitting there
explaining what's happening or what. Right. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing, that's a big matzo ball hanging over your head there that, there's so many unknowns for the layperson and a lot of unknowns for the attorney.
Exactly.
There's no love lost between me and Alec Baldwin. I've chased him down the street a few times when I was with Extra and he was in court with he was in court with Kim Basinger for their divorce, their ugly divorce. Remember when that phone call came out with India, his daughter, and he calls, you're a pig, and I mean, so he's not a nice guy. He really has his moments, and he hates the press.
Yeah.
But having said that, the right thing happened here because it was so egregious on what the prosecution did. And I was the guy saying, hang them all. I don't care if Hannah Gutierrez got this guy was holding the freaking gun. So don't give me the no. I didn't pull the trigger. Have some responsibility. But I still agree with what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I mean, when you run into like a Brady violation like that in the middle of a trial, I mean, the Brady violation where it was like unequivocally proven that it happened, but beyond that, having a prosecutor call herself to the stand was just something we'll probably never see again. It was, and I happened to be traveling to Denver for the True Crime Podcast Festival when that was all going down. So I was like, out of all the days, out of all the gin joints in all the world. Well, but all right. So this has been amazing. I want to have you back.
Hey, thanks.
On.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. And definitely when Linda's back, we got to do something. And then, come over and visit us in our neighborhood sometime.
100%, man.
On Justice Served.
So, like, tell us where we can find all your content. We've been throwing it in the chat. You guys, please, if you're listening to the podcast, please go review it. Give it reviews on Spotify, Apple, 5 stars. Listen to it. Give it reviews. If you're watching it, same. You got to like, share, subscribe, all those things.
Appreciate any of those things. Subscribe to all those things. It's a lot of just what this is. We're just kicking around what's going on in courts, entertaining questions about it. We're trying to do a live Q&A every Monday at 1:00 now to kind of build that sort of back and forth. Because to me, that's where it's about being able to talk to people. My background is much more traditional, where you're doing prepared shows and you don't have that connection. Sometimes it's bad connection, if you know what I mean, Bob, because some people are brutal, but that's okay. That's all right. Bring it on. So we like to do that. And if you want to check us out, Justice Served is the place for it on all the normal platforms.
All right. So one of our mods said, we had about 100 live. We'll get a nice return on our replay crew. You'll see. We got to get, if we don't get Michael and Linda over 50 from this live, just know, family, I'm going to be exceptionally disappointed in you. I'm going to check the number, and I'm going to come back tomorrow. They got to be over 5. The content's great. You can hear he's got an amazing broadcast voice. The guy knows his stuff. He's wonderful, and I love. Like, I've only been live in studio one time with Law and Crime, and it was with this guy. So I'm a big fan, a big friend of his. I really want to,
brother. I think what you're doing is great, and I appreciate you sharing a little of your time.
Absolutely. So I want to plan this sooner rather than later. So I'll be in your DMs. I'll slide in your DMs. Let's get Linda on here, especially if you guys have something that you're excited about. Let's come on. Let's promote it. Let's talk about it because the people will love it. All right, my friend, go enjoy your evening. Sorry about the time snafu.
No worries, mate.
Someday I'll figure it out. Out East Coast,
Take care, man.
All right, brother. Be good. All right. We'll pull Michael off. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. I want to jump off because Steve and my boys over at Publicly Buzzed have just started streaming the amazing Phil Spector trial, which, again, if you don't know anything about it, Alan Jackson is not defense attorney extraordinaire. He is prosecutor extraordinaire, and who was supposed to be our guest, but because I screwed up the time, Linda Kenney Baden was supposed to be on here. She was a defense attorney in that case. So it's got all the major players in the Phil Spector trial. So you're portaled in. You guys don't have to do anything. I think I did it right this time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please go and subscribe to Michael and Linda's channel. I am going to check. I promise. I'm going to check your work, and I'm going to be very disappointed if you don't do it. Do the family proud. You guys always do. Every time we have creators on, you guys always do us proud. So do it again. Thank you so much. Hasta mañana. Oh, and tonight, premiere Dorsch Gacy tapes. Be there, be square. Just check it out after you're done with the boys. All right, y'all. Take care.